My first memory of Larry Murphy is in his barn, where he had a full pottery studio with a wheel and all. I was probably around 5 years old. He, his wife Rose, and their kids were good friends with my folks, my brothers, and my sisters. They lived a couple of blocks away from us. If you're familiar with the town of Sonoma, you're probably aware of Murphy's Irish Pub on the square, which Larry started many years ago. I've always been fascinated with Larry, his devotion to art, hospitality, and, well, a heck of a sense of humor. I think what I've always been inspired by is that I grew up thinking I had to do one thing in life, that I was supposed to go to college and study one topic and then pursue that straight through. That was the norm. But I had someone around me that showed me there was a different way you could live your life. He was so humble he didn't even know he was setting an example. Maybe it shouldn't come as a surprise that I ended up being an actor, a writer, artist, while enjoying life working in hospitality. But what I didn't know was that Larry had done even more than I had thought. I'd heard whispers from my mom and dad, and I've been wanting to talk to Larry about his life for a long time. So finally, we got together on the phone. This is me being nosy and asking Larry a bunch of questions about the dynamic life he leads. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoy talking with him.
So I gotta ask, so I gotta ask, what, so I gotta ask, so I gotta ask, what, so I gotta ask, so I gotta ask, what, so I gotta ask.
I'm Joshua Farrell, and this is So I Gotta Ask.
Hey, here I am.
There you go. All right. Hi. How is everything?
Things are good. Things are good here. It's a gorgeous day here. I don't know about where you are, but boy, beautiful day.
I'm down here in LA, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, we usually get a pretty good January anyways. How are all the kids good and grandkids? All your grandkids
Yeah, not much to report. Same old stuff. Moving along. My oldest is Sam is 24. Believe it. And
wow.
And, Katie's only one just turned 18 the other day. So time's flying by.
Yes, indeed. Wow. Is Sam Monica's oldest?
Yeah, he's Monica's oldest.
Do they have 4?
2 years after that. 5.
5. Okay. I know they're all soccer players, right? Or they were.
They're all soccer players. Jesus, yeah. I say that's a soccer cathedral at their house, and it's a sacrament when the World Cup comes around.
Oh, I saw that, and I was rooting for Croatia, by the way, and I actually sent Monica a picture of because I have your painting in our living room here in LA of the hilltop in Croatia, so I sent her a picture on the day they were playing. Croatia is on my list of places to visit, on the short list too.
Don't ever head out that way. If I'm still around, don't ever head out that way without checking with me, because I've been there a lot and I know a lot about it. My grandparents came from a little island out in the Adriatic, and that's just drop dead gorgeous and beautiful, wow. Crystal clear water, all that.
So let's talk a little bit about some aspects of your life. I think I told you this, but there's a saying in my household, and my wife still, I've been saying it, I guess, now for 17 years in front of her, but for many more than that, is I just want to live a Larry Murphy life. So what that means to me, I've spent most of my life as an actor, writing, certainly many jobs in hospitality and other areas. My first memory of you is at a pottery wheel, or in the barn making pottery, and also playing music. So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Sure.
All right.
Well, let's talk about it. Sure. Okay. Let's do it.
And I also have to clear up a rumor that my mother said. So about.
Okay.
Yeah. So. That possibly had the CIA involved, but that could have been a rumor. I don't know. I don't know if you can talk about that.
It's a story. Yeah, there's a story.
Okay, all right. So let's start with, well, I'll get to the pottery. Were you in a Dixieland band in Sonoma or some sort of band like that? Because I remember that when I was a kid.
I was in a bluegrass band.
Bluegrass. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And this was before Murphy's, right?
Bill Houston. You remember Bill?
I do remember Bill Houston.
He was in the band.
Okay. And was that just a group of Sonoma guys?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was all Sonoma guys. Vic Conforti. I don't know how many of you guys you knew. Ted McKnight.
How did you guys get your band together? Was that just like a let's get together and kind of hang out?
Okay, Ted McKnight had 2 daughters, and one was taking Suzuki violin lessons. You familiar with that program?
I'm not. I'm familiar with violin, but not Suzuki. Is Suzuki
Suzuki is a
Japanese?
It's a method of learning music, and they teach violin and piano and perhaps some other things. I think it's violin and piano. And his daughter, when she was going through this program, had to be part of a recital. And even though the music that they taught was serious violin music, they let these kids pick any song they wanted to play in their recital. And his daughter Maggie picked a bluegrass song called "The Mountain Canary," because when you bounce a violin bow on the strings, it makes kind of a squeaky sound that people think sounds like a donkey. And in the old days, they referred to donkeys as mountain canaries because of that sound. So we became the Mountain Canary String Band, and Ted and I backed up Maggie on her recital. My banjo, Ted's guitar, and she played the fiddle. And then we decided to ask some more guys to play with us because we enjoyed playing together, and it grew to 6 people. And we did, garage band for the most part, but we did some fundraisers for Mike Thompson and a couple of weddings, and we played at Jack O'Hare's retirement picnic, and that kind of stuff.
Nice. Did Jack jump up and bust out the harmonica?
Yeah, sure did.
My favorite thing about being an altar boy. The harmonica was my favorite thing, and also I'll tell you this quick story. I was doing mass, and I would do the 12 o'clock mass, and one time, he's a huge 49er fan, and he gets done, everyone gets their communion, and everyone sits down, and he gets ready to give the final speech, right? And he turns around to us, and he his back is to the audience, and the 2 of us are there, the 2 altar boys, and he motions us to come closer. Comes closer, and he goes, "Gentlemen, let's wrap it up. Niners are on in 10. And he turns around and he finishes mass. It was one of my favorite memories ever. Because mass would finish, and literally the door would be swinging. We'd be picking up his robes because he would dash out at 1 o'clock and run over, and then he'd be in the recliner watching the Niners.
I'll tell you a good Jack O'Hare story. When I opened the pub, after 2 or 3 months after it opened, we had a grand opening. And, everybody came down the alley. And so I asked Jack if he'd come and bless the pub. And he said, of course. So he came down there with his Irish cap on. And everybody was milling around waiting for things to start. And I said, okay, why don't you start off the ceremonies with a blessing? So he pulled a little bottle of water out of his pocket. And he says, well, I've got this water here I'll use to bless the crowd with it. And where would you like it to be from? The River Shannon or Loch Derg? Loch Derg's a holy site in Ireland. And I said, wherever it's from. Wherever it's from is fine with me. And he says, no. He says, it's from my bathroom sink. But I'm not going to say
that. He was a one of a kind. Oh, my gosh. Did you know he went to college with my mom?
Yeah, we all grew up in pretty much the same neighborhood. O'Hare, your mom and me, in the Richmond district, yeah.
Where did you grow up in the Richmond?
14th and Clement. And Jack O'Hare, I knew Jack O'Hare. I went down to seminary for 3 years, and Jack O'Hare drove me down there. He was about 5 or 6 years ahead of me in school. Wait,
you went to the seminary?
I went to the seminary.
Oh, wait. Okay, so here we go. All right. All right. Let's talk about that. So you were going to be a priest?
Well, that's what the seminary's about. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how old were you? When did this happen?
Oh, in those days, that you don't take kids out of the 8th grade, and in our a lot of Irish families, and your family was probably pretty much the same way. Most weekdays, or many weekdays, there'd be some priest sitting at the kitchen table having a drink, or
Yeah.
usually having a drink, getting out of the priest's house and having a drink, and that was a big deal in our house. And they were the heroes of my growing up time with the parish priests. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Everybody loves these guys, so maybe I'll do that. But that only lasted for 3 years.
And then, at 3 years, were you like, I don't know if this is the right fit?
I found out there were girls out there.
That'll do it. That will do it. And so you did it at About Face, and then what happened? Where'd you go?
I went to St. Ignatius.
Okay.
I graduated from SI.
And then did you go to USF or what? I guess I only say that because that's what my dad and all my uncles did. But
no,
where
I
did
went to St. Mary's, and your dad and I went to a couple of St. Mary's USF basketball games. And because in those years when he and I were going, USF was still a great basketball power, and it was always very disappointing for me that I had to eat St. Mary's loss and then ride all the way back to Sonoma with him.
Well, you're having a pretty good year this year.
Yeah, they sure are.
Looking pretty good.
Well, they got Gonzaga next Saturday night, so things may change.
Yeah, I'll be rooting for St. Mary's. Let's make it happen.
Good.
All right, so you go to St. Mary's, and then, all right, well, let's flash forward a little bit. So, and then we'll flash back. When I meet you, or when I first remember meeting you, is you're doing pottery in the barn in Sonoma, but you weren't teaching at Justin Siena yet. If I'm
no,
correct.
I was.
What were you doing at that point in Sonoma in the early 70s?
I was a potter.
That was it. That was your gig. All right.
Yeah. I was a potter. I was a potter for about 12 years, and it worked out just fine when the kids were little. But when they got to high school, coffee cups and hanging planters and teapots weren't paying the bills. So I asked for a job at Justin Siena. It so happened that the art teacher had just quit, and they were looking for an art teacher. I had a master's degree in ceramics, so they hired me.
All right. Well, and so did you go there when Tony went, or before that?
Tony and I went the same year.
How awesome is that? Okay, now that all makes sense. So you took over the art program at Justin Siena for Tony's first year. You went to St. Mary's. Did you fall into art when you were at St. Mary's? Is that how you got introduced to that life?
I had a pencil in my hand growing up. Yeah, I took art classes at St. Mary's, and then when I came out and Rose and I got married, well, even before that, when I was living in San Francisco after the Navy, I took a lot of art courses. I took courses at the San Francisco Art Institute, and over in Oakland at the California College of Arts and Crafts, and just all kinds of places. I was taking University of California Extension, and I got a master's. When I got out of the Navy, the GI Bill paid for me to go to Cal Arts and Crafts, and I got a master's, and I fell in love with ceramics. So that's how that whole thing evolved.
Cool. And then, you went to St. Mary's, and then you went to the Navy, and then you went to art school?
Yeah. Well, I was whenever I was around San Francisco, I was taking a night class someplace, and I got my master's in I got it the year I moved to Sonoma. Was the year I was awarded it.
So I stay with the timeline. The Navy. And then, this is the rumor, I heard two things my mother said, and I was always like, I gotta talk to Larry Murphy about this. I heard fighter jets and I heard CIA. Can you talk to me about either of those?
Well, you can talk about both of them if you want.
Yeah.
I was a Navy pilot and did that for 6.5 years.
Wow.
Got out just before Vietnam started. About 2 months after I got out, October of '63, my squadron went over there and started shooting at people, and that was I missed it by that much.
Wow.
I figured I really dodged a bullet. I would hate at that time, being a former a current military guy and pretty much part of everybody in my with whom I had a relationship was very patriotic. I bought the Vietnam War the whole time I was in the Navy. Did take me long in the '60s to change that, but at that time, had they gone into fighting, I would have been part of that. And now I would have to look back on the fact that all those guys I were in the squadron with were dropping bombs on villages and killing people. So I dodged that bullet.
And was that the progression into the CIA? Is that how that?
Well, then I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something with my life that had some content to it, other than just go get a job. I had a job for a while at Kaiser Steel, writing copy for their magazine, little magazine. I hated showing up every work with it. So I applied for 2 different things when I got out of the Navy. I applied for the Peace Corps, and I applied for the CIA. And took a long time for either of them to answer me. And then within about 2 or 3 weeks of each other, they both answered me at the same time, saying, "Yes, we'll hire you. Come to work for us." So I found out what each of them would entail, what jobs I'd be doing. In the Peace Corps, they needed someone to go down to Bolivia and teach sanitation practices, which is, and I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, somebody's got to teach them to dig these trench toilets outside their communities and that sort of thing. They need that kind of help. I asked the CIA what they're going to do, and they said, we'd like to send you to Bangkok, Thailand. You can take your family if you want, and you're going to fly airplanes. So I thought, well, slit toilets, fly airplanes. I think I'll take the airplane option. And so I did. I went to work for the CIA. I only worked for them for 2 years.
Fascinating. So Rose was with you. You all went to Thailand, and
no. Okay. So then once I got in, like happens to a lot of people, I guess, in the Army, they changed that whole story. And instead of Thailand turned into the Congo, and I couldn't take my family because there was an actual shooting war going on in the Congo at that time. So I ended up living in a little lake called Lake Tanganyika, living right on a little lake with a bunch of renegade Cuban pilots who were flying. They wouldn't let me in an airplane. They wouldn't let an American in an airplane because that would have been a bad optics if they ever got shot down. But these guys were flying for me where I told them to fly.
Gotcha. So you were kind of like on the down low. No, you weren't supposed to be there. So no, they didn't want to find you in an airplane, an American in an airplane.
Exactly. Yeah. But I got to fly, but not in any kind of military way.
And then, so when you say 2 years, were you like, all right, I'm done in 2 years, or was that just I'm ready to move on?
Rose was pregnant with Tony, and I was over there, and so I told him, look, I'll go to Congo, but I want to be home for when my child is born. And they said, okay, well, you bring it home. So he was due in November. And I think in September, they sent me home. And they put me on a desk. And that was fine because we were living in Washington, D.C. And then it turned out that they said, well, you know what? You seem to work. You seem to do this desk work pretty well. We'd like to make you a staff member and let you do this for a career. And about that time, we were really missing the Bay Area. Rose and I. We met in San Francisco, and we loved San Francisco. Still do, for that matter. And we were living in Washington, and the winters were dreadful, of course. And we were dying to get back to San Francisco. So Pan Am was hiring pilots. So I went and took the test, and they hired me. So we moved back to San Francisco after 4 years with the CIA.
All right. Well, now I didn't even know about Pan Am. So I continue to be amazed. So this is all before you go, right? This is before you go to get your master's degree in art. So you go back to work for Pan Am. I think right. Joe Hershaft's dad worked for Pan Am for a while.
Was he? Yeah.
He wasn't a pilot. He worked not front of house, but
oh, right. Yeah.
I guess guest services, you would say.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So then, how long did you work for Pan Am?
4 years.
Flying planes.
Yeah, I was a crew member. I was Pan Am had a position that not a lot of airlines had, called a third pilot, and they would take junior guys like me, and they put us in the cockpit on those long flights that took over 8 hours. Because if the flight took over 8 hours, the union said a pilot couldn't be in an airplane in any flight longer than 8 hours working. So they put two guys in the cockpit. The captain and the first pilot. I was the third crew member, but the second pilot. And I would spell them so they wouldn't exceed the 8 hour thing, right?
Yep.
So I'd go up and sit in their chair and be the official pilot for that part of the flight. And then, depending on the captain, every once in a while we'd get a landing and take off. But some of them didn't let us do that.
And then would they catch a little rest, little shut eye while you were watching over everything?
Yeah.
All right.
They'd go back and rest. Uh-huh. I think the big airplanes, that was 747s came in while I was at Pan Am, and I think they even had a little, a bunk someplace. The captains and the guys, when I was doing it, they'd go back and sit in a first class seat, snooze. But I think they eventually built a place for them to go sleep on those airplanes. There's huge, big things. They had enough room on them.
So at this point, are you like mid 20s, mid to late 20s?
I went to work for Pan Am. I went to work for Pan Am in 1967. So I was 32. No, wait a minute. I quit Pan Am in 1971. That's when I quit. And I was there for 4 years. So I guess I went back there in 1967. That's right. Okay. And so how old was I? About 1935, 45, 55, 65, 32 years old.
So did you quit Pan Am knowing that you were trying to apply for graduate schools for art at that point then? Or were you just like, I'm done flying?
That's it. No, you hit it right. I went there. I had been, while I was taking classes, I started built a little studio in my garage, and I started making pottery, and I started selling it. And I had some stores in San Francisco that bought it and were selling it for me. And then I would, if I were home for these little art shows that, in the 60s, you could sell anything made out of stoneware pottery or macrame. I mean, it was the hippie thing was a whole huge boom time for anybody in the crafts. And so I could sell them, and I had enough money to pay the mortgage, and we kept it going. Why I was no longer at Pan Am was that it was during that time that I suddenly changed how I felt about Vietnam. And I was very much opposed to it, and probably pretty much part of whatever movement there was to go on marches and do that, and whatever protesting they could. And I went into the chief pilot's office and said, I'm not going to, they did a lot of charters to Vietnam during the war. I said, I'm not going to Vietnam anymore. And so we had a difference of opinion about that. And he said, you'll go where we send you. And I said, well, don't send me there, because I'm not going back and forth like that. And by that time, I was senior enough to hold any bid I wanted. And so I just started flying all my flights from San Francisco to London, and avoided Vietnam.
Wow, you moved up. That's pretty quick. That's great.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of. Again, remember, I was that third guy in the cockpit,
right?
And there weren't that many guys doing that, so I could be senior within that community pretty easily.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't competing with captains and first officers for seniority. I was just competing with guys who came in about the same time as me.
All right, so that brings us to this is. I'm so glad I talked to you. So that brings us to 73-ish, right? And you got a pottery. Well, you're doing pottery full time, and you decide to get the master's degree while you're doing it, so you could do both of those.
Yes, exactly right.
And in your brain at that point, are you like, I'm going to be an artist the rest of my life? This is the way it's going to be.
I'm going to be a potter for as long as I live. Yeah.
And you built that studio in the back in Sonoma at that point?
Or we moved to Sonoma in 1975.
Oh, okay.
And built, first of all, working in that little barn you remember, with Bob Richards. You remember Bob?
Is that Kevin's dad?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Who had he had that little electric bike.
I knew Bob and Joan in San Francisco, and they found this house that we're living in. They said, hey, there's a place for sale up in Sonoma by owner. Take a look at it.
But you moved to Sonoma as an artist and have your business?
That's right. Continued to put it in stores, continued to go to art shows, did a lot of orders for people. Yeah. As I say, it worked pretty well until it didn't. Kids got to be teenagers. Tony was going to high school. Things were starting to get expensive, and I wasn't making a fortune as a potter, which we were able to keep the mortgage paid. And Rose was working. So I decided that probably it was time for me to get a real job. So I was lucky. Justin Siena was hiring. Whoever their art teacher had quit, and I went over there and talked to Brother Gary, if you remember him.
I do remember Brother Gary.
Yeah.
Yes. And then Brother Chris was there at that point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Who is when I met Tom Brady, and Giselle, I mentioned I had a great conversation with them because my in was his uncle, Brother Chris.
Yeah, sure.
And very warm and conversational about the whole thing. It was awesome.
Oh, good. Yeah, he would be. That's close family, yeah.
So you fall into that, which is a pretty great gig. And I knew you, of course, because my brother was friends with your son, and my sister was friends with your daughter, and we would see each other all the time. And then I got to go to school at Justin, and you were our art teacher. Now, you're the art teacher at Justin, and help me with the math here. Did you start the pub while you were the art teacher?
No.
Or how did you transition out of Justin?
I worked at Justin for 14 years, and I kind of outgrew the role of a high school teacher, which a good high school teacher needs to be able to participate in all those high school activities with enthusiasm. and I ran out
Well put.
for for chaperoning dances and going to building floats and all that stuff. Because naturally, as the art teacher, I had to be part of building the floats and building sets for the drama. And I thought, this is a job for a younger person. I got tired of it, and I had always. Your dad would understand this. Growing up in the Richmond district in San Francisco was a very Irish community, and at that time it was all Irish and Jewish. A lot of Jewish people on our block, a lot of Irish people on the block, and a sprinkling of Russians in the Richmond district, and that was it. But there were lots of Irish bars, and of course my dad found all of them, and they were kind of a great community of people. And I loved that whole scene. And so around, I guess it was 1990, I always said to myself, someday I'm going to open a bar. I'm going to open a neighborhood bar. At one time, a friend of mine and I, ex-Navy pilot and myself, made a bid on a bar in San Francisco called Shanty Malone's. But we were too young and inexperienced to raise any money, so we couldn't do it. But it was always kind of in the back of my mind. So I went to Ireland and discovered Irish pubs. And I said, I have to do that someday. That just looks like so damn much fun and like a great thing to do with your life, because they're such an institution over there, and to a degree here, but not to the over there. So I said, I want to do that. And Ma Stokell, do you remember Ma Stokell?
Sure, absolutely.
He decided he wanted to sell his little meat pie shop. And he had a couple of beer taps in there, and he sold basically pub food, steak and kidney pie, pasties, fish and chips. And he wanted to sell it, so he wanted to buy a bigger place. So I bought it from him. And
okay, so you bought the place first, and then you quit. So you were like, "Peace out."
Well, no, I quit Justin Siena in June of 1993, and I opened the pub in July. Wait a minute, is that right? Yeah, July 1st. I opened it in July 1st, 1993. And I quit. I had worked through that school year.
Amazing. Okay, and at this point, so, and I don't want to mix it up. I want to get this correct. It is, the pub at this point, when you opened it, is where Taste of the Himalayas is, or is it the little tiny one first?
Taste of the Himalayas.
Right. Okay. Now was La Hot Dog? Why does the name La Hot Dog come to my mind? Was there a hot dog place?
Francois Guerra. You remember the Guerra family?
Yeah. Okay.
Francois Guerra went to Justin Siena. Was the daughter of Gretchen and Lily. They're still alive, by the way. And they had the French bakery. And they bought that property to develop it in the back with shops. At that time, there was about 8 or 10 shops back there. Now there's the pub and the Himalayas. That's all there is. But there were about 8 or 10 shops. There was a coffee shop. There was a jeweler. There was a gift shop.
Hooker's Shebang. I remember that place.
And there was a hot dog place called Le Hot Dog. And it was run by Francois, their daughter.
Oh, okay. It was
that was I think, as I remember correctly, that was across the alley from wasn't it? I'm having a hard time remembering that, because Ma Stokell had that place, Ma Stokell's, but Francois had Le Hot Dog.
Yeah, and Ma Stokell's became the place that eventually Murphy's Irish Pub would become.
That's exactly right.
Okay, it would move across the way. And there was a candy shop called Hooker's Shebang, right?
There was something called Hooker's Shebang. Is that what it was?
I think it was a candy shop. It was the weirdest name it's still hilarious to me, but
yeah.
Okay. and they had the pipe shop there, which
Yeah, the coffee tobacco shop.
coffee tobacco shop. Okay, so you travel. Now it makes sense because I lived on 10th and Anza in my first year of graduate school, so that's how I was introduced to. I'm like, wow, how many Irish bars can you have in a 2-block radius? This is amazing. And now it makes sense.
You lived at 10th and Anza. You lived a half a block from where Jack O'Hare grew up.
Yeah, I lived on 10th at Anza. It was on 10th Avenue because I would walk down and then my parents would come visit and they would take me to my dad would take us to the little pubs that that you all probably, they were all had different names at certain times, but it was like doing a history lesson with my parents. Except it was
you remember?
pub.
You remember the Abbey Tavern?
Absolutely, of course.
Do you know the guys who own the Abbey Tavern now own Murphy's Pub?
Talk about full circle.
Yeah.
Do they know the whole story? That's amazing.
What whole story?
Well, the idea to get Murphy's Irish Pub came from you living in the Richmond district, where all the pubs are.
I guess they don't know that.
That's definitely that's full.
Guys. Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about the pub for a second because I agree with you, and I think whether you set out to do this or not, it was exactly it really was a place for the community to hang out, and you kind of made it that way because it could have just been a bar, or you could have done it however you wanted, but it really so from the get-go you were going after that. Where in Ireland, it's really the place where everyone meets.
Right.
And that was your vision for it.
Exactly right. That's you put all that. Remember all that crap I had on the walls.
Oh yeah, I loved it.
Of all my customers, they like to go someplace where you got your picture on the wall.
Everyone likes their picture on the wall.
Yep, and so I think we came pretty close. You never do it exactly as well as they do it in Ireland, but we came pretty close.
I also did you always have live music, or was that in the back of your brain that you were going to have music as a part of?
Evolved. I was very open to it, and in the beginning, just some musicians. I forget if they contacted me. What was that gal's name? I can't think of her right now. She said, how about my husband and I are musicians, can we come and play at the pub? And I said, sure. And then other people said, hey, they're playing at the pub, can we play at the pub? At that time, you say there's a lot of music in Sonoma. You're right, there's a ton of music in Sonoma, Hot Monk, all kinds of places. But at that time, there wasn't. And so there was no place for people to play. And there's a lot of musicians around. So it was a buyer's market. I could put people in there and they'd play for fish and chips and beer. And then it just evolved into something that got to be pretty popular. And has been trivia night.
Oh, my mother loved the trivia night. Absolutely.
I know she did. Yeah.
And loved. I remember going down there, and you and Rose, and you calling it, and the whole thing. It was so fun. And honestly, I think it's still really hard to get a seat. That's how successful it is.
I made some great friends in that, Josh, and among the people that I made, whom you know well, have become good friends over the years now for almost forever, are the Thompsons, Rich and Disty.
Ugh, love them.
And they come from the British pub tradition, which isn't that different, a little bit different, but not that much different than the Irish pub experience. And you remember, Disty's folks came from England, and so did she.
Yeah, and we would often all go meet them down there because I think they were there once a week at least.
Pub night once a week. They were there once a week.
Now, how long were you in the small pub, and then how long was it till you moved over to the bigger space?
6 years.
Was that a natural progression? Were you just like, the opportunity was there and you knew you could handle it?
that Babette's place were leaving. They wanted to go to San Francisco to build a reputation, and so they were leaving. And Gretchen, the landlord, said, "I'm going to rent that place to a restaurant. Do you want to move across the alley and do your thing over there?" It was a hard decision. I knew it was going to be a whole lot different, and it was. For one thing, at the first pub, I just had a beer and wine license. At the new pub, I got a full liquor license, and that changed things appreciably. Although I never really had any problems with, other than once or twice on St. Patrick's Day, and never really problems with drunks. For one thing, purposely, I always closed the pub at what time did I close? I closed the pub at 10 or 10:30. I think I said last call around 10.
Smart move.
And I did that on weekends too. And I did it because it was pretty clear to me that nothing good ever happened in a drinking establishment after 10 o'clock. And I just would, rather than trying to make that extra buck, I didn't want to put myself through that, and didn't want to turn into a place where people go late night on the way home to stay drunk,
Right.
So that, I don't know how I got to that, but the full liquor license did change things. It for one thing, became a more profitable enterprise.
I bet, but also you went from where one or two people could handle the tiny pub. Now you went to actually having a staff, I'm assuming, right? Because then you had to.
We had 9 people on payroll at the old pub. That includes the dishwasher, the bussers, the people who waited tables also cooked. So we rotated around. I cooked, and then the waiters and waitresses who worked for me cooked. We just took turns around because you could. It was easy. It was fish and chips. Everybody knew how to make whatever there was to make, and if they didn't, they learned. In the other pub, the average was about, at any one time, was about 23 people.
Whew.
That was a whole lot of it. But then I'm talking about, 23 people includes the part-timers, the bussers, the high school kids, that.
Gotcha.
Dishwashers.
And I have to mention this because I always thought it was awesome, but the play readings, the Irish play readings, that I don't know if Rose completely championed that, or both of you.
That was entirely Rose.
But I still love it, and I still think about it because it was just such a great. I don't know. It's like, you don't need a theater. We could do it here, and you're like, yeah, you're right. I just love that kind of kicked off that, which then kicked off all sorts of things you could do back there in that snug, which weren't just music based.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I'll tell you a wonderful story. You may already know it, but when Rose was really sick, about a year before she died, a year and a half before she died, she was slipping badly cognitively, but not entirely. And one night, her sister came up and got her all dressed up, and we took her down to the pub. She was in a wheelchair at the time. And I have a hard time telling the story. Every time I tell it, I have to struggle through it. They wheeled her in the back, and they had a big party, a tribute to her. And all those people that were in plays for her were there. And they did a performance, and they dedicated it to her, of course. And then Bob owned the pub, Bob Smith.
Okay.
And then they unveiled a plaque that said, they put over the entrance to the back room. It's still there. It says the Rose Murphy Performing Arts Center. And the guys who bought the pub, the Abbey Tavern guy, says that stays. That's not coming down. So it's still there.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's great.
And I didn't know that, and I'm so glad that, because that's what it felt like. It really looks like a performance art space, and
Well, she turned it into that. Yeah.
amazing. So now, eventually you sold that to Bob, who was your friend. But did you decide to run for mayor of Sonoma while you were at the pub? Correct?
No.
No, or was it after?
I was teaching at Justin during that.
Well, you were mayor. Wait, were you mayor when I was at Justin?
No, you were probably gone by then. I ran for city council for the first time. I think it was 84. Your dad was partially responsible for my being on the city council because he had been a planning commissioner. And I said, what's that like? And he said, well, it's a way to serve the community. And so I said, well, maybe I'll try it. So I went and I became a planning commissioner. I did that for 4 years. And then I ran for city council. But I probably never would have run for city council had I not been on the planning commission. And it was he who got me interested in being on the planning commission.
And then city council led to mayor.
Yeah, right.
And you're doing all this while you're teaching full-time art school at Justin.
At Justin, yeah, right.
No shortage of energy, Mr. Murphy. That's amazing.
I wish I had it today.
Well, so you do the pub, and then once you sell the pub to Bob, well, I know are you still doing your watercolors?
Well, that's when I started taking watercolors pretty seriously, and I started taking classes. And I had, I was retired now, and I could do whatever I wanted to do. So I did a lot of these. You go someplace for a week and do a workshop with a accomplished artist, someone who's out there making a living doing it. There's a lot of people doing that, giving workshops and that sort of thing. So I took a lot of those. I did a lot of those when I got out. And, once again, started selling a few of them. So I've been doing that ever since. I'm sitting in my studios right now.
It's come almost full circle from...
from the pottery thing.
Yeah, from the pottery thing. That sounds like a great way to go travel somewhere and then take kind of a workshop class while you're doing that?
They were always in beautiful places. I went to Bend, Oregon, and Cambria, California. I mean, it was always gorgeous where I went. So
I never thought of traveling that way, but that is actually a brilliant idea.
Yeah, right. And then occasionally, Rose wouldn't go for the whole week because she was usually working, but she'd come down and maybe spend the last day or two with me, and we'd just enjoy being in that place.
Oh, right. Also, I forgot, in the middle of all of this, you also have a bed and breakfast. How can I forget this part?
Well, yeah, it's a vacation rental. It's not quite a bed and breakfast.
Okay.
Yeah, and we still have that. That's still going.
Well, you were one of the first people I remember that too. I was like, oh, that's I remember you had I guess it was the Pottery Barn. You turned it into a little cottage.
No, not quite. It was a rental, and it's right next to where the studio was. I turned the studio was that little former tool shed.
Oh, okay. That's connected to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. So now, what's your days are spent doing art and trying to catch up with all the grandkids?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like a lot of retired people, I don't know where the hell the time goes. I hear people say that you think you're going to have all this free time and you're busy all the time. The day goes by in a hurry. We're still running the vacation rental. That's
great.
That's still going.
Do you enjoy that aspect of meeting people?
I enjoy it a lot, Josh. What I tell people is that job is exactly the opposite of a dentist's job. Dentists go all day. Their clients are people who do not want to be in that dentist chair. They'd rather be anyplace else than in that dentist chair. And so it's a lousy experience. And I think a lot of dentists react to it, saying, "My God, my people are always, they're always unhappy with being here." I'm in communication with people who are on vacation. They're finally got that visit to the wine country that they've been dreaming about.
I got to ask you one other thing, because I was just writing a story about it for this project that I was working on. The old folks parties. Do you remember driving around and picking up people for the old folks party and shoving them in the vans?
I didn't know what you're talking about for a minute. The Evelyn Berger thing.
Yeah. Do you remember you and my dad, like literally, like you could never do that these days. And I always, like, I laugh now because I'm like, oh my God, we would just stuff old people in whatever vans you could. Because we had the bus, and I felt like didn't you have a bus or?
We had a Volkswagen bus. Sure.
Yeah. So the two buses, one Sunday a month, we would go pick up old people from the convalescent hospitals and shove them, seatbelts or not, shove them in the cars and then take them to go have lunch at Father Robert's Hall. And
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and I always think about that because it was so, I would tell the story over the years to people of like, oh, the old folks party. Like, well, how did you get the people to the thing? I'm like, we just shoved them in vans. It didn't, like, that doesn't seem legal. No, they'd wheel them out and we would just pick them up. Would you sign paperwork? No, you just, whoever wants to go.
Yeah.
We'd put them in and, take their wheelchairs and shove it in the back and then take them out. And
that was a great institution. That was one of I just said her name.
Mrs. Berger.
Evelyn Berger. She put that together.
I feel like Mrs. Piotr was around for that. There's a few people. But that was, I remember us doing bingo, or we'd do like skits and performances and things for them. But it was such a very
greatest.
Great. I feel like that's one of those things that very like, I was like, oh, that's very Sonoma to me, is like, oh, we just did that because that's what everyone was doing. Taking care of people. It's kind of cool. Well, Larry, thanks for taking an hour out of your day and answering a bunch of nosy questions from me. But I am absolutely, I stand by it, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years because I'm very open to it, just like how you've lived your life. I'm always like, and you also have just a great spirit, and I've known you my whole life, but it's very like I always look up to it, and it's also like I'm like, oh, I don't just have to be one thing, and I don't know, for a while in my younger years I always thought that I did, but I feel like I'm more interested in living a fuller life as opposed to being, just one thing. And I just feel like you're kind of the example of that. Like, you can do many things with your life and do them well, which is amazing.
That's very I guess it didn't come out. It didn't get drawn up this way, but it just a lot of good things happened to me, and had a lot of help along the way. So, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it also sounds like you still got your good crew of guys. I love that you were going over to Bob's house. I feel like you've always had your group of Sonoma.
There's always every town I know has got this institution of geezer coffee with all the retired guys get together down at some coffee shop, and that still goes on here. There's coffees going on all the time with the old farts.
Well,
so,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll make sure next time I'm in town, I'll just pop by and say hi.
Well, come by. We'll have a pint of Guinness down at the pub.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, thank you. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye. What amazes me about Larry is his ability to shift focus, stay involved, and do so many things really well. It's very inspiring. A life staying connected to art, family, business, community, and taking care of people. I dig the Larry Murphy life. I'm glad I was able to talk with Larry, and I hope you enjoyed this last hour. My name's Joshua Farrell. I like talking to people about making art, music, acting, hospitality, and just about anything. If you like books, I've written a couple. The Sonoma Police Report, a little oddball glimpse of Sonoma Valley from 1980 to 2010 through its very funny police logs from the Index Tribune. And I recently wrote a book called Counterculture, an essential guide for service, about providing, well, you guessed it, great service. Check them out at your local bookstore first, and if you don't have one of those, you can always find them online. Thanks for listening, and come back soon. I should have some more interviews. Bye.
So I gotta ask what? 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 So I gotta ask what?